Okay, I believe we are now live. I think I'm live. I have a lag on my computer where there's a little delay of like 5 seconds. I can't figure out how to get rid of this little 5 second delay. And so I guess we all just have to live with it. Hello, David. Thanks for signing in. This is another in our ongoing experiment of the Depresh Mode Debrief. I'm John Moe, obviously. I'm wearing my Maximum Fun t shirt, and that's because our Max Fund Drive is coming up next week. See, like right now, I'm just about to see myself stand up. That's what the lag is. Uh, if someone could solve it for me, how I could exist in the same place instead of 7 seconds in the past from what you're seeing, I would love to hear all about that. Hello, Sean. Hello, G. And Gabe is with us. Gabe Mara, everybody, whose name you can see in the chat, is the producer of Depresh Mode, and he also produces One Bad Mother for Maximum Fun. So yeah, like parenting and depression. How's that for the maximum amount of fun? So say hi to Gabe when you get a chance. We'll look into a way of having him join us in his own screen, and maybe he can figure that out, for he is a smart. So let's quickly. I'll touch on some really exciting news. One is that we're getting sponsored left and right lately. We're picking up a bunch of sponsors. I heard from somebody new today, and apparently we are on the charts in a variety of countries. The United States, probably most notably, and also charting in Great Britain, Sweden, China, Hong Kong, separate chart from China, Norway, Austria, South Africa, Argentina, Singapore, Israel, Finland, the Czech Republic, Vietnam, and Costa Rica. Yes, we are finally popular among the Finns. They said it couldn't be done. I've actually interviewed a listener from Finland before who has been dealing with depression for years. I shouldn't laugh. Who's been dealing with depression for years and is also a clown. So she found the theme song to the old show very, very entertaining, because it was about the Pagliacci situation, the saddest clown kind of thing. And she's awfully fond of saunas, which, seems to make sense. So this week's show had a bunch of names as we were working on it. Finally, Gabe and I just started calling it COVID trauma. Yeah, you're working on COVID trauma? Yeah, you got to do the tracking for COVID trauma. But this is honestly the welcome, Stacy. Welcome, everybody. Thank you, Sean, for weighing in on OBS. That is what I'm using is OBS. So this is the issue, the topic of this week's show that I've been thinking about fairly obsessively for the past year, even before the old show ended, let alone the new show started, because I think it's going to be one of the more pressing issues that we're going to be dealing with for a long time. As soon as I saw this shaping up to be a major world event with lots of deaths and lots of disruption, I started looking at the models of not just things like SARS and MERS and the Ebola virus, but also things like world wars and the Great Depression and 9/11, things like that. And so I got really fascinated. I don't think it's the last time we're going to be talking about it, but the opening interview, I think I really wanted to be with Ken Duckworth. So Ken was the first guest, the guy with the squeaky chair, and he is the medical director for NAMI. I talked to him on the old show. I moderated a panel discussion over the summer about because Ken Burns is working on a new documentary about teen mental health, and so Ken was a part of that, and we really hit it off because I think he's got this knack for talking about these issues in a way that is comprehensive, in a way that gives sort of a 30,000 foot view of the issues and their impact on society as the medical director for NAMI. But also he makes it super personal. He told that story about the the effects of the depression, meaning that he had to drink an entire jug of milk when he went to his grandparents' house. So I wanted to start getting that. And then Kassera Diet came to us as a listener to, I believe she was a listener to Fanti, and Laura Swisher, the Swish, our senior producer, suggested her for our show. And I've already talked to her one other time since then. So it's great to get her perspective as a doctor, as a practicing therapist, as a Black person in America, a person of color in America, to talk about the different impacts that something like a COVID trauma can have on different communities. So we're really excited about that. Ken talked about this CDC study, which I want to talk a little bit more about because there's stats that I think might be helpful to hear. So this was a big comprehensive study, came out in August. So like after 5 months of COVID, and now we're more than 13 into it. So 42% of people had clinically significant depression symptoms that rose to the level of a disorder. And before COVID, similar study was put it at 11%. The big four, as Ken said, anxiety, depression, trauma, and relapse. Trauma was at 26%. So over a quarter of people responding already had symptoms of trauma, which are often hard to detect while the trauma is still going on. I said in the newsletter yesterday, you can't assess the damage to the car while it's still crashing, and we're still very much crashing. So, but we already know 26% were affected. We know that the people most affected, people of color, essential workers, and unpaid caregivers. I went into it a little bit deeper too. Young women are the most heavily affected, according to this study. 18 to 24-year-olds, I think Ken mentioned that, people whose adult lives were just getting started, are feeling this more, feeling it a lot more. And, I've been thinking about that as the father of a 20-year-old, father of an 18-year-old, and father of a 12-year-old, almost 13. And trying to remember the impact of COVID for them is going to be a lot different than it is for me. I'm 52, and so I'm prone to be home anyway. I'm prone to have a lot of habits, skills, patterns that I'm pretty used to. And my 20-year-old and 18-year-old are just getting started in those worlds. So it's going to be really different. And I believe, although it's not exact, but like if I've been through a year of this and I'm 52, to a 26-year-old, given how much of this has consumed, like let's say that the effect of this past year for me has been 1/52nd of my life. So if you're 26, it'll be 1/26 or twice as long, if that makes sense. So for my 13-year-old, it'll almost be like it's 4 years of COVID. How much it feels like. I'm not sure about math. I also looked at, this is from some stuff that I'm starting to do for a speech that I'm making the rounds on now, because this topic isn't just for me a one-shot episode and then we're going to forget about it. I intend to keep coming back to it, and I'm giving speeches on it now. We know that of 36,000 New York residents and rescue workers, after 14 years after the attacks of 9/11, 14% still had post-traumatic stress disorder, 15% experienced depression, which were both much higher rates than in the comparable populations. And something that I think I might have mentioned it in one of the shows, I can't remember, I might have cut it out, is the concept of the bereavement multiplier. So there's a school of thought making the rounds in mental health right now that we need to look at a bereavement multiplier of roughly 9 when it comes to factoring in the mental effects of COVID. So that is people close to a person who has died, and it just accounts for families. So parents, children, grandparents, grandchildren, siblings. Estimated to be about 9 per person. So when somebody dies, those 9 people are impaired, at least for a little while, through grief. Like they would be eligible to go on a bereavement leave. It doesn't factor in friends, coworkers, aunts, uncles, cousins. It doesn't factor in the secondary trauma experienced by frontline workers, classmates, whatever it is. And so the actual number is much higher. So that means when you figure 600,000 deaths from COVID in America, that's my dog barking. You're into the millions, 4 or 5 million of people who are going to be missing work, not contributing to the economy, possibly in long-term grief scenarios. People who aren't able to show up fully in every way for the society we all live in. So I think something Ken talked about was people who've been through previous traumas, hyper experiencing those traumas again, more likely to be set off by new traumas such as COVID. And honestly, like for me, the topic, this particular topic, probably wouldn't have been as big of a thing before had I understood less about trauma. So when I was, before COVID, when I was getting back into therapy, getting a good therapist who I really clicked with, I would think like, I've been through some things that are like trauma, right? And so, but, do I have post-traumatic stress disorder? And, what kind of trauma exactly is this? And what I came to figure out with the help of my therapist and with just a lot of searching is that the direct acute traumas that I've been through, I mostly had something of a grip on. I had done a lot of processing. I had done a lot of investigation. I had done a lot of honesty. But it's the complex trauma that I was ignoring. So, I grew up in a home where my dad had a problem with alcohol, and the things that had traumatized me were the 1,000 little things that go along with having something like a substance issue in the home. So it wasn't as many grand dramatic moments. It was just things being a little bit wrong all the time over the course of 18 years. And it was explained to me, yeah, that's a complex trauma. And so when I noticed what was happening with COVID, like the isolation, the fear, the not knowing, the kind of stupid politicization of the whole thing, I thought this is really kind of a complex trauma situation. So, I think I was hesitant to really call it as like we are all victims of an acute trauma, just as if we had been mugged, but it's more of a complex thing than that. So, so that's kind of where this issue got started. I feel like it only just got started. And like I've said, we're not going to, and I think Dr. Diet said this too, like we're not going to know what we're up against until it's done, until we reach that herd immunity kind of point. So I just wanted to kind of give those notes on what I'm doing. I think it's going to be coming back a lot more, and especially once people are really starting to deal with it. A big takeaway that we kind of touched on a little bit towards the end with Dr. Diet. If you need a therapist, or if you think you might need a therapist, get those phone calls going right now, today. Search for people, find if they're available, and get on that, because there's going to be a real shortage. And I think some people, whenever I talk about this, the idea of, you should get help is not a particularly useful statement, because you can't just like look up help and call the number and then help arrives. It's much more complicated than that. So the practical advice, and if you have questions, pop them on into the chat here. If you want to figure out why things are happening a certain way and you think you can get better with therapy, then definitely consider looking for it. If you find yourself in a state of disorder, that is, you're not making it to work when you should, or school when you should, or people in the house aren't getting fed when they're supposed to, and it's because of a mental issue that you're having, that's a disorder. That's all a disorder is. It means it's disruptive to the life you should be living. And in that case, definitely seek help. You can look through your health insurance website, often a really good place to go. Look for people who you're going to be comfortable talking to. If you're really only going to be able to open up to a woman and not a man, you could search on just women. If you like Psychology Today, the website also has a really good therapist search. It's gotten better. It used to be not so good. It's gotten a lot better. Where you can search on male therapists, female therapists, non-gender identifying therapists. You can search by your health plan. You can search by the types of therapy that they offer. You can look at their education, their history. I'm not so young, so I wasn't super comfortable, with a therapist who was under 25, for instance. I just didn't think that was going to be a good fit for the things that I've needed. So you could do a lot of searching around. Try to limit it to people who say they take your insurance, and then at that point call them to see if they're taking patients and to confirm that they're taking your insurance, because that's the information that can often be incorrect. A lot of people will look for a psychiatrist and get told there's 4-month waiting list, 8-month waiting list. It's ridiculous. If you have it in you to be a psychiatrist, you have job security to do that. I don't think I could be a psychiatrist. But if things become acute, if you're in distress, if the disorder puts you in distress, get to a family doctor, get to a general practitioner. An urgent care clinic, really, like, somebody can see you a lot sooner than a psychiatrist can see you. And although they're not a psychiatrist, they can evaluate where you're at. They can get you immediate help if you need it. They can do a variety of things because they're doctors and they're allowed to. So keep that definitely in mind. If you don't have insurance, there's sliding scales available. I know with a lot of therapists, especially now, they want to serve as many people as they possibly can. And they offer sliding fees. And with teletherapy, there's actually more openings now because because more people show up for those appointments. They can plan more solidly for those, and you don't have to leave the house. So welcome to the issue that I should probably write my next book about this, although by the time books come out, it'll be 2 years from now. So I might just have to urgently talk about this issue all the time. Sherry was asking about this same thing. I'm so sorry to hear about your son. The whole system is ridiculous. Sherry's having a problem getting care for her son. I always say that the people least equipped to deal with the fiasco that is the American healthcare system are the people with mental health challenges, namely the people who need it the most. Like, if you're doing completely fine, you have the best chance of navigating this system, but the least need for it. So it's a really aggravating paradox, and I don't know the answer to that. I like to believe that it bends towards a better world, but and I think it's better than it used to be. I think it has so long to go. Stacy brings up the New York Times article on the post-COVID mental health issue called languishing. I read it, and offer your opinions here in the chat. Uh, I I found it. I got real sarcastic about it in the newsletter last week, because it it's if you're not depressed but you're not thriving, you're languishing, and you're more likely to develop worse symptoms over time. I think it's good as a flag for what could happen in the post-COVID world. But yeah, I was a little confused by the use of, like, the reliance on the term languishing, as it seemed like the doctor being quoted really wanted to introduce this word into the lexicon, like he was really trying to make fetch happen, and I wasn't so convinced. So, but it's worth checking out. Just search languishing on New York Times. You might get a lot out of it. I will say, if you're willing to, if there's something out there that helps you, then that thing is good, as long as it doesn't involve, like, heroin distribution or something. I will mention, next week is the beginning of the Max Fund Drive. Here is a shirt. They gave us shirts, so that's good. And we have some cool things coming up for it. There is a Depresh Mode pin that will be available, which I understand to be a really big deal in the Max Funiverse of, you get pins for all the shows that you're supporting. So we have a pin, and you could trade them just like your Olympic athletes, except you're, fans of this show. So you're home in your sweatpants and not, doing the luge or something ridiculous. So we have the pin. I taped a panel discussion that I moderated with another podcast called the Dead Pilot Society. It's all about television writing. So I moderated that, and it had Rachel Bloom from Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. It had Stephen Canals who's the creator of the show Pose. And it was a really enlightening discussion about the portrayal of mental health, and also just like the mental health of the people who make these shows and how they turn that into art. That is available when you are a supporter, a financial supporter of Depresh Mode. And then the other thing we're making available, this was my job yesterday. Yesterday, I watched the monster movie, the silliest of all Japanese monster movies, Destroy All Monsters, which features Godzilla, Mothra, King Ghidorah, all just like probably a dozen monsters. And it's just so silly. So I watched it on a commentary track with John Hodgman, Judge John Hodgman, the celebrity John Hodgman, who has been a close friend of mine for 15, 20 years. And, you've probably heard us joking around together on some venue or another over the years. So John and I recorded that yesterday. It's a lot of fun. That'll be available too at that, for supporters of the show. And, and we'll definitely be back next week. Next week's guest is Peter Sagal, the host of Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me. And if you've heard the old show, he was the first guest that I had on the old show. And it was in the wake of a pretty brutal divorce that he had gone through, and kind of how he had figured out what his mental health challenges were and how that meshed with the brutal divorce. And so it's sort of a revisiting with him because he's now remarried. He's got a baby. And we talk about some of the things he figured out, some of the things he changed, some of the things he accepted that he could not change, some of the wisdom to tell the difference. Where you go to procure those treasures. Good question, Sherry. So that will be available at MaximumFund.org/join. MaximumFund.org/join during the Max Fund Drive, which starts, I believe, on the 2nd. So you can So you can donate as of then. Gabe, can you confirm that here in the chat if you're still with us? So yeah, you can do that then. So yeah, so Peter Sagal is with us on that. We're going to have some special guests joining us for those shows. Jesse Thorne is going to be with us. Gabe's going to be with us for some of the drive. Laura Swisher, the Swish, is going to be with us. Rhett Miller. And then the weekend after Peter Sagal is a double shot with Zach Kornfeld from the Try Guys and Ira Glass. The Ira thing just sort of came together. I've never actually spoken to Ira despite being in Monday the 3rd, says Gabe. That's where to go. That's when to hop on. MaximumFun.org/join. So yeah, no, I was in public radio for like 20 years and I had never interviewed Ira or I think ever spoke to him one-on-one. We had emailed a little bit. So anyway, yeah, so that'll be pretty cool too. So that starts next week. Peter Sagal next week, Ira and Zach Kornfeld the week after. Prizes to be had. This is it exactly. Sherry says Zach, and Elizabeth says Ira Glass. Wow, Ira Glass. It's kind of a double shot of big celebrities from two very different walks of life. I had to explain the Try Guys to Ira Glass, which is, not something I expected to do when I got up and got to work that day, but these things happen. All right. Well, thank you for the attendance. This is the longest debrief we've had. I think next week's we're going to have a lot to talk about with Peter Sagal as well. Sorry I missed last week. 1 p.m. Central, a week from today, we'll talk, and we'll see you all soon. Thank you to everybody. Thank you, Gabe. And thank you to my Depreshies.